Our next storyteller, Allan Reed, has had an illustrious international development career that's taken him to Europe, Africa, and South Asia. Tonight he has a story about a handful of the countries that he's lived in around the world. The story is called Water Follows Us Home. Here's Allan.
Thank you. They called it Fort Apache. It was a desert outpost, but it was not in the American Southwest. This was in the Sahara Desert. This was Nouakchott, Mauritania, on the west coast of Africa. Fort Apache was the name given to this town by the American Embassy community in the capital city where Io, my wife and I, were first serving with USAID, our foreign aid program. We were there for 4 years. The Sahara Desert is the largest sandbox in the world. And our 2 young sons, Atem and Oba, loved to play in the sand dunes and rolling down the towering sand dunes, sometimes just missing a scorpion at the base. During our 4 years there, it never rained once. It tried, but the rain always evaporated before it hit the ground. When we first arrived in Nouakchott, which means windy, sandy place, Io and I were struck by how many Mauritanians lived in traditional tents, and there were thousands of refugees from the Sahel drought of the 1970s. We had both been volunteers living local in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Sudan, and this is the first time we were actually associated with the American government. And when we got to Nouakchott, the American Embassy assigned us a house that had 3 bedrooms, indoor plumbing, you didn't have an outhouse, electricity, running water. There was a refrigerator, a washer and dryer, carpeting, glass windows, and even air conditioning. And we wondered, how are we going to get to know the Mauritanians if we were living in such a palace? So after a couple of weeks, we decided to go and talk to the Embassy Housing Committee. They said they were expecting us because they had assigned us what they considered the worst house in the American Embassy community because I was just a junior officer, and they were sure we were going to complain. But we went to the housing committee and we told them, you know, we see all these Mauritanians living in these tents, and some of them are really amazing. Can we live in a tent instead? The housing committee laughed us out of the embassy and said, you're not Peace Corps volunteers anymore, you're diplomats. Now get back to that house and enjoy it. Well, we did actually buy a tent, and we set it up in our sandy front yard. And that was where we entertained our Mauritanian and American friends who preferred a desert ambiance. But when the first sandstorms hit, we actually were very grateful. We had glass windows we could close. But home was wherever we were as a family. After 4 years, we got ready to go to our next post, a second assignment. And that year, the American Embassy decided not to use the professional moving company from next door in Senegal, the neighboring country, because they didn't have moving companies in Mauritania. Instead, they hired dependent American high school kids who came to visit their parents working at the embassy for the summer. This way, the kids had summer jobs, which is a nice idea. But they gave them a few planks of wood, a few cardboard boxes, some plastic sheeting, and told them to fashion crates for departing household effects. And when I saw our possessions put on this open truck with that much space between the wooden slats, I asked, is this really going to work? And I was told, look, you haven't seen it rain once here during your 4 years in Mauritania. 3 months later, when our household effects arrived at our next post, they weighed 400 pounds more than when they left our house in Nouakchott. Because when they had been put on these open trucks and driven from hot, dusty, dry Mauritania to the port of Dakar in Senegal, it was the rainy season. And the extra weight was the water that had embedded all of our things. Our clothes were slimy wet with mold. Pictures were ruined. It was a nightmare. And that's when we realized we should have bought the insurance we didn't have. 3 posts later, we were assigned further down the West African coast to Conakry, Guinea. Totally different climatic environment. Whereas Mauritania was dry and dusty, It rained in buckets in Conakry. It's very, very tropical. And when we got settled in, Donna, who worked in the embassy in the management office and became a good friend, told us, now, be sure to keep the lights on in your closet so your shoes don't get so moldy. It was that kind of a tropical environment. It was lush and green. The American embassy community was very nice and cohesive, as it all often is in hardship and difficult posts. We would do things together, like take the embassy evacuation boat out to an offshore island for the weekend, or visit each other's homes. But while Conakry was lush and green and beautiful, it also had mosquitoes. And during our first 2 years there, Io, our youngest daughter, Fia, and I, we all got malaria, in spite of taking anti-malarial tablets. After 2 years, we were scheduled to go to home leave in California for a few weeks and then come back for a second tour in Conakry. But 2 days before we were getting ready to travel, I got a call from the mission director designate for the first USAID mission to Moscow, Russia, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and he asked me to join his team. This was an opportunity for a malaria break. Because I think it was only a matter of time before we got malaria again, or our other 3 children, Atem, Oba, and Maya, got malaria, and I didn't want to take that risk with our family. So it was easy to agree to the reassignment. The problem was we were supposed to leave in 2 days for home leave. So I asked Donna, what do we do under these circumstances? And she said, look, here's some cardboard boxes. Just pack stuff lightly, loose pack it, and then when you're ready to go, we will ship it from Conakry to Moscow. So Io and I packed boxes upstairs, packed boxes downstairs, and 2 days later we left to Washington with the kids, and we took a month's intensive Russian language training course. Before the end of the course, we got a call from Donna, and she said ominously, "Are you sitting down? Because you need to be sitting down to hear this." Well, the day after you left, the USAID mission controller came, and he was assigned an apartment where there wasn't a washing machine. Since your house was empty, the embassy went to the house, took out the washing machine, and they forgot that there's virtually no city electric power in Guinea. And each house, as you remember, has a generator, but you weren't there, so the generator wasn't running. I don't know how to tell you this, but I just might as well tell you directly. When they took out the washing machine, they forgot to screw the top back on the water connection pipe. And every night between 2 and 3 in the morning, water surged out of that pipe, all flooded upstairs into your boxes and everything, and then it flowed downstairs into all your boxes downstairs. It even flowed as rain when it came through the ceiling from upstairs and fell as rain downstairs. At that point, Io and I were in stunned silence. Donna, thinking we had hung up, said, "Are you still there?" We said, "Yes, we are. What can be done? Water follows us everywhere." After she hung up, Io and I looked at each other in despair. We'd been through this before in Mauritania, and now here it was happening again. It was a horrible situation the first time. We just didn't want to have to face this a second time. Only this time we had 4 kids. And when you take your children everywhere around the world every couple of years, it's comforting for them to carry some things with them, just to remind them of where they come from. And now all of that is lost. We could hardly concentrate on our Russian language studies. After a few weeks, we ended up in Moscow, and a week later, our household effects arrived from Guinea. We did not want to open them. We didn't want to have anything to do with that. We dreaded opening those boxes. And when we opened them, we were astonished because clothes, linens, pillows, children's stuffed toys, animals, blankets, towels, they were all dry. Everything had been lovingly repacked. We were amazed at how much had been saved. We couldn't believe it. There were a few moldy book pages, but hey, this was amazing. We called Donna and said, "What happened?" She explained how she had organized the whole American community in Conakry to take all of our boxes that were saturated, take the clothes out, take everything out, dry them off, repack them, dry them as best they could in the humidity of Conakry, and lovingly send them on to us in Moscow. So here's to you, Donna. Thank you so much for the love and care that you and all our friends back home in Conakry showed, because you all made it so much better.